It looks like the American people like to get spied on. It's amazing. But the majority of people now think, my, surveillance, satellites, tapping your telephones, that's all good. I don't agree with that. I think it's bad. Well, the reporter who exposed the secret government surveillance program says he has more revelations ahead.
And meanwhile, the man who leaked that information has gone into hiding. Here's reporter Ephraim Graham.
Edward Snowden is on the run today. He's the target of an international manhunt by federal agents after revealing top-secret information about the NSA's massive data collection programs. The journalist who broke the story says more bombshells are coming. Snowden reportedly has more documents that will produce dozens more stories in the weeks and months ahead.
We're going to have a lot more significant revelations that have not yet been heard.
Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers are condemning Snowden's leak, and some are calling for criminal charges.
He's a traitor. These are important national security programs to help keep Americans safe and give us tools to fight the terrorist threat that we face.
Members of Congress are also criticizing the Obama administration for failing to protect privacy rights in its pursuit of terrorists. Representative Adam Schiff said, quote, "There's very little trust in the government, and that's for good reason. We're our own worst enemy." The U.S. faces anger from abroad as well. Officials in Germany and the European Union issue complaints over programs that target suspicious foreign messages transmitted through U.S. providers. Meanwhile, according to a new Washington Post Pew Research poll, the majority of Americans support the NSA tracking. Overall, 56% of Americans say it's acceptable for the government to investigate possible terrorist threats, even if that means compromising personal privacy. 41% say the practice is unacceptable. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Yeah, that landmark book, 1984, I've mentioned it before, that was a shocker in those days because there was a big Soviet threat out there, but they had a big brother. And I see in science fiction the future where there would be a tracking device to every one of you that we all would have something implanted in our bodies that would track wherever we were. We'd go out of our home, we'd hit a button, and we should say, okay, we're leaving our house. We'd walk down the street, we'd be under surveillance from a satellite, a drone, or something to be watching us. We'd arrive at our office, we'd log in again. Never could we go anywhere without Big Brother watching, and there'd be gigantic computers. We have never in the past had the technological capability to fulfill Revelation, which said people can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast. Now we have adequate computer capacity to track every human being on the face of the globe. And that, folks, is scary. I don't care what the Pew poll shows, that is scary. Well, while surveillance has grabbed the headlines, the Senate is turning its attention to another hot political topic. And Lee Webb has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington, D.C.
That's right, Pat. Immigration reform takes center stage this week in the Senate. Republican Marco Rubio will be the one to watch as he tries to sell the idea to skeptical conservatives. David Brody sat down with Rubio to talk about why so much rides on the outcome.
It may not be impossible, but Marco Rubio is on a mission, and passing immigration reform involves convincing two audiences, Spanish speakers,
bueno, muchos en la izquierda quieren decir eso. Usted está a favor de la ley de Arizona,
and influential conservatives like those who listen to Rush Limbaugh.
The first question I have for you is why are we doing this?
Well, for one, as a Cuban-American, Rubio walks the walk. And as the lone Tea Party sponsor, he also gives the effort a bipartisan feel. But if he's not satisfied with the final bill, Rubio could walk away. His job, bring conservatives on board.
Has this been harder of a sell than you originally thought?
You know, the answer to it is yes and no.
Well, the easy part is this. He believes a majority of the country would accept illegal immigrants as long as there are penalties that go along with it. Rubio also sees hope in the evangelical community.
I think the biggest change has not been in the pulpit, it's been in the pews. You know, the folks that are attending church that maybe 5 years ago felt differently about this issue, now they're worshiping next to an illegal immigrant family. Now they've met someone who's in this circumstance.
The harder sell for Rubio is making sure the bill clearly enforces border security.
I think that's where we are right now in this debate is, can we do enough about border security so that people will support doing something about the 11 million? And that's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm working on trying to accomplish. We've gone to my colleagues, and what they're saying is, look, we just don't think it's enough. We don't trust the administration, quite frankly, Republican or Democrat. We've been told this before, that they're going to secure the border, and that never happens.
So the question for Rubio is, what is his line in the sand?
For me, if we start trading, let's say if we start weakening the guest worker program in exchange for stronger border security, I'm not interested in that horse trading.
A number of Tea Party conservatives accused Rubio of pushing bad policy from the streets.
We put him in office, and this is not what he promised us.
To the airwaves back home in Florida.
Senator Marco Rubio is making the same promises, like real border security. Promise broken.
To the ever-powerful talk radio circuit.
I can tell you from my radio listeners, they think it's time to stop dividing the Republican Party on this issue with all your good intentions, and I know you have them.
Therein lies the political dilemma. Rubio is considered by many to be a GOP frontrunner for president in 2016. His support for immigration reform, however, might hurt his standing with conservatives in the primaries.
It's a political reality of what could potentially happen.
Well, the day I start making decisions around here with the mind towards what other office I want to run for, I'll no longer be very effective. Whatever God's plan is fine. Whatever's going to happen on this issue, whatever's going to happen with me, is what God's already planned for me. My job is just to be obedient and have faith in that regard. And that's really something like everybody else, I struggle with that because the human side of us wants us to think about the here and now. But I think ultimately, if you try to approach every issue in life, from the smallest detail to a big issue like this, with that viewpoint, it gives you a sense of peace and calm about it you wouldn't otherwise have.
He's going to need that calming peace during the turbulent days ahead. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Pat, I believe that if conservatives had the assurance that the administration, that the government was willing to secure the borders and secure the border well, they might go along with this.
I think you're right, especially the evangelicals, Lee. I have a great love in my heart for Hispanic people. I've worked so much in Latin America with so many people, and we realize that these people, frankly, share our philosophy. They believe in God. They believe in personal freedom. They believe in all the things that we hold dear. And they've been stigmatized as being wetbacks and braceros and all that stuff. We can't have that any longer. And I think just from an economic standpoint, we need farm labor to haul in our crops. We can't get the crops in without the labor. The American worker won't do that any longer, and we need these people coming in. We also need high-tech skills. We train people from India and China and other places around the world, and they leave here with these tremendous skills. Instead of welcoming them and saying, we need you in our high-tech industry, we've got to have people with knowledge, skills to help us with these technological problems. And instead of that, we stigmatize them. It's a confused, broken policy. And Rubio is trying to take a principled stand. But Lee, as you say, I believe that the evangelicals particularly, when they begin to understand the love that we have in our hearts for the Hispanic people, especially Latinos, whatever term you want to use, and how close we are in philosophy to people who are pro-God, pro-family, pro-church, all those other things, we will begin to say, let's craft legislation that will accommodate them, bring them into the fold, bring them out of the darkness. And what's been shown also is that when these people are legal and they start working and paying taxes, they're not a drain on society. They're a net addition financially to the society. I mean, it's a plus for all of us. Lee?
Pat, the Swedish government has decided not to deport a Christian back to his home country of Iran. Reza Jabari faced a possible prison sentence and torture if he had been forced to return. And it appeared that's what the Swedish government was prepared to do, despite Jabari's Christian testimony. But now it is allowing him to become a permanent resident. Jabari's pastor, Kai Berger, says CBN's story about Jabari's situation changed the political climate for Christian refugees seeking asylum in Sweden. The Obama administration has decided to go along with a judge's order to let girls of any age buy emergency contraceptives without a prescription. The Obama administration had argued that age limits for the morning after pill are common sense. Now the administration says it's ending an appeal and will abide by a judge's order to make Plan B available to women and girls. Opponents argue that parents and medical professionals should be involved in major medical decisions involving young girls. The Boy Scouts' new policy to allow gay members is on the agenda of the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting. The president of the convention, Frank Page, says he expects a resolution encouraging an exodus from the Boy Scouts. He would like local churches to consider alternatives to the Scouts, like the Southern Baptist Royal Ambassador program for boys and a new non-denominational program that's in the works. Page also told CBN News he's deeply concerned about the culture's mindset towards Christians. He cites the changes in scouting as well as efforts to deny churches access to meeting space in public schools.
I believe the day will come soon where we will see not only antagonism and not only hesitancy to help or to even encourage churches and Christian work, but an active persecution thereof. We're seeing it around the world. I believe we will see it here in my lifetime.
And Pat, the Southern Baptist Annual Convention is going on today and tomorrow in Houston.
You know, Lee, it's a terrible shame when people who are homosexual amount to maximum 2% of the population. Those who are lesbians, about 1%. It's a tiny minority. But they are willing to rip apart the framework of traditional marriage, to rip apart an organization that has done so much good for young people, the Boy Scouts, to rip apart certain of these other things that we have counted as important in our society. All for one thing, that the way they do sex will be accepted in the mainstream of society. 2% deciding what the rest of us does, and they were willing to destroy it. And the Hollywood and the so-called liberal media has jumped on board that this is the new civil rights. Well, I don't think so. But in any event, it breaks your heart to see the Boy Scouts, because many of these scout troops, as you know, are housed in churches. They have been sponsored by churches, and they have, for God and country, that is their motto, and they, you know, are morally straight and so forth. They have these pledges that they make, and it's been a marvelous institution. And to see that torn up in order to accommodate a few kids that, you know, want to do sex with each other, I mean, it boggles the mind. Lee?
Pat, the Standard & Poor's credit rating service has a better outlook for the government's finances. The agency has upgraded its ratings for U.S. Treasury bonds, pointing to the better economy and less political fighting over spending. Washington's huge deficits don't seem to faze investors. They have been buying U.S. bonds for years, and that has kept interest rates low. Well, it looks like Tim Tebow's career in the National Football League isn't over just yet. Multiple sources report that Tebow will sign with the New England Patriots. A good fit for the former Heisman Trophy winner, in my opinion, for a couple of reasons. One, his presence will not generate any kind of quarterback controversy there. Tebow has no chance of unseating future Hall of Famer Tom Brady. And two, Patriots coach Bill Belichick has had success in the past in signing high-profile players that no other team seems to want. The so-called experts have said Tebow is not NFL material because of his unorthodox throwing style. It takes too long for him to get the ball out of his hands. Plus, he's very public about his Christian faith, and that, of course, has been kind of a lightning rod of criticism. But none of that seems to bother Tim Tebow. He says he's intent on playing pro football and glorifying God in the process, Pat.
I tell you, I think the treatment of Tim Tebow by the New York Jets is nothing short of shameful. Their quarterback, Sanchez, just wasn't living up. They were losing games all the time. And Tebow is tremendous with about 6 yards to go, bullying his way through the line. He could have made a tremendous fullback if that's what they've used him for, but they just, I don't know what it was that Ryan, the coach, just apparently had a thing about Tebow. He wasn't going to use him regardless. It was just a travesty. Well, Bill Belichick, he's got a lot of courage, and the thought is he'll get Tebow making at least 10 touchdowns in the next season by giving him the ball on the 3-yard line, and he'd carry it across.
He's got a lot of experience to back up his ability to do that.
Look what Tebow did out in Denver. He rallied the team. He's a great team player, and he
great attitude. Not
he's
hard.
got an incredible attitude, and man, he got muscles. He's been working out like got this chest and muscles. Oh well. Anyhow, the Jets, they ought to get the Goat of the Year award.
A multi-denominational group of Ohio churches is worried that the president's health care law does not protect religious liberty. The Ohio Council of Churches is calling for more to be done to broaden the religious exemption in the plan's contraception mandate. The group says it doesn't oppose most of Obamacare, but it is concerned about the plan's definition of a religious institution and its impact on religious charities, hospitals, as well as universities. Hundreds of Turkish riot police moved in on anti-government protesters in Istanbul, Turkey today, blasting them with rubber bullets and tear gas. They forced them out of Taksim Square, where they've been holding out for more than a week. Police also broke up other protests in Ankara, using water cannons and tear gas. Protesters accused Prime Minister Erdogan of trying to turn Turkey into an Islamic state, undermining Turkey's secular traditions and freedoms. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.